So many questions surrounding the Sydney Swans. I'm not sure anyone predicted that they would be 14th after round 7. And we know what happened on grand final day last year. They were embarrassed, not for the first time, under John Longmire, humiliated at the hands of the Brisbane Lions, and through a myriad of reasons, they find themselves struggling in the bottom 6 in between St Kilda and the Melbourne Football Club with just 2 wins to their name. Obviously, one of the biggest questions surrounding the Sydney Swans is the changeover in their coach. And I guess, as we talked about a little bit earlier, the question has to be asked, was it the right decision, given not just their win-loss ratio, Lordy, but the way in which they're playing?
I'm behind Dean Cox, so it's too early to say it's not the right decision. John Longmire seemed tired. He wanted out, and Dean Cox, I think, has been there, and they're a huge fan of his. So I think it's very, very early to write him off. But what they do lack at the moment is identity. So that's where Dean Cox has to find himself and say, what do we stand for? Look at the numbers of where they're at as a team this year at 2 wins and 5 losses, and they don't really have a position of strength. So they're very poor offence, so ranked, gone from 1st to 15th. So it's a dramatic drop-off. They're not defending the ground either, which we'll get to, which he said that was an area he wanted to work off. Clearances, they've still got some stars in there, but that's not working either. And they're not effective inside 50, Jimmy, where their forward line's just, he's tried all sorts of things with McCartan back and forth.
Yeah, ball movement's been a big issue, and sides have gone to work and slowed them down and then forced them long and down the line. So getting them skinny, as they say in football, and there's a lot of players who are down on form from previous year, and he can't find a big guy to mark the footy at the moment. So that's why he's trying to experiment with McCartan down the line as well. But you're throwing Gould, Mills, McDonald and Papley missing large chunks early in the season, and all they can do is look to last year and look at Brisbane Lions and the Hawks. So you've just got to try and get some motivation from those 2 teams.
Yeah, Dean Cox spoke in the pre-season on SEN Radio, had this to say about what he wanted to change at the Sydney Swans this year.
The way we defend. I think probably towards the back end of last year and certainly the last day was not at the level we want. So just the way we defend as an 18-man defence and how we go about that.
So John Longmire was very much a one-on-one team defence. No, sorry, defence. So you
contest-based.
Contest-based. You covered your own man, just beat your man, whereas Sydney felt they could go to a new level by defending the modern game to team defence. But
and Lloyd, was it fair to say the players embraced that Cox change?
Yeah, they would have for sure, because I think sometimes they might have felt they were, that's not where the game's at anymore, where you just defend your own. That was sort of football for a while. But John had great success, not the ultimate more than once, but he could get his teams to grand finals. But they're still not defending very well. So whether it's just the talent's not there, Jim, or he can't embed it at the moment.
Yeah, and they're out of touch, and we highlighted some of the players, but when your midfield gets beaten, it makes it very difficult to play team defence. So team defence works really well when you've got enough pressure on these contested situations, and they got slaughtered out the middle, but give some credit to Big Witsy because he's an excellent ruck. But watch this. The Gold Coast are able to come out through the front of the stoppage in a lot of this. And if you're playing team defence, it's so difficult to get proactive because all of a sudden your good position goes to a bad position really quickly. And that's why they were able to pile on 12 goals unanswered and 40 points from stoppage in the last couple of quarters. So their players are out of form and they're adjusting to a new game style.
Sam, if you are going well, and Damo, if you're going well through a system, you can cover injuries. So you look at what's going on at the Western Bulldogs versus the Sydney Swans. So Luke Beveridge has his group knowing exactly what is being asked. So if you want to compare injuries and go, we don't have Goulden, we don't have Mills, Papley, the top 3 are guns.
Yep.
But because he hasn't quite been able to embed what he wants his players to do, and he's a young coach in terms of AFL senior coaching, he's not been able to generate out of his team what Luke Beveridge has at the Western Bulldogs.
Yeah. And Lloyd, when you look back on the Longmire era, now it ended badly because of that grand final loss in 2024, which was added to the 2022 loss, and they were horrendous in isolation losses. But to make grand finals in 5 seasons out of the 14 that he coached, and even last year when there were periods of the home and away season that got away from them, he still was able to regroup. So they're coming off that stability, and what it does, I think, it pretty quickly reinforced to everyone in the competition that this guy could seriously coach. Now, he was broken, and it was a mutual decision that had him stand down. It wasn't just the Swans moving him on. It was clearly a mutual decision. But very quickly, he's going to appear to other clubs as being someone who did hold this club together through thick and thin.
There's clubs looking at this situation very closely, that John Longmire is attainable. And, I mean, you think... So this is an article he did with Vince Regara in the Sydney Morning Herald a few weeks ago. And you can see here, he's asked a direct question about whether he's interested in coaching Tasmania, and he can't answer it. You know, is he done with coaching, or I only just stopped coaching? That's a guy who would look at other offers. But there's the Tasmania project, which is going to be a long-term project. We know that, no matter if and when they come in. But when you've got sides like Carlton and Melbourne, who are holding off the Vultures at the moment, given recent form, you've got his old side, North Melbourne, who have won 16 games in the last 5 years and are second last on the ladder. I mean, his record is unbelievable. 12 finals appearances out of 14 seasons coached. Jimmy, there are teams that would give their left arms for that sort of record.
You just think they'd be looking at him?
No, I know for a fact that at least one club has had high-level discussions around his availability. So this is on now. There is a race that is beginning for John Longmire. And I know that there are some teams that are of the opinion that usually the older premiership coaches, once you get them back in, don't go as well, and there's been a history of that. But given his record, Jimmy, of getting teams...
Does he want to coach
to the
again?
line... Well, I mean, we just showed you that quote from his interview with Vince.
History says they do, Jimmy. Maybe not right now, but history says they do. They always go back.
Yeah, I know we're assuming he's just going to step back next year.
And his last game was a grand final. Now, it was a bad one, but it was a grand final.
I'm not saying we're assuming that he's going to step back, but I think, Jimmy, the point is that he's going to have offers. He's
of course.
Extreme interest.
Is this club Melbourne you're talking about? Or?
I'm not going to say which club it is, but I think it'll come to fruition later in the year. And I don't think it's just going to be one club that is looking at John Longmire. Now Sydney, and through their leadership, and Tom Harley and Andrew Pridham, have made a courageous, bold decision, as the Sydney Swans tend to do. I'm not sitting here saying that it was absolutely the wrong one, because, as Damo said, he was broken. But I think one of the interesting discussion points, Lloyd, is the harder that the Sydney Swans find it this year to replicate the last few years, does that increase the status in which we hold John Longmire's record?
Yeah, it probably does. I know internally at the Swans, they'd be concerned big time about their inconsistency and their inability to stop run-ons. Like that Gold Coast side last week, they kicked 12 goals in a row. That is just unbelievable. And the week before that, Port Adelaide, 7 goals to 2 at half-time. So they're just so inconsistent, which you don't expect with the Sydney Swans.
No, and one of the 2 wins they've got was against North Melbourne, which is not going to count for too much this year.
The side that beat them on the weekend, speaking of premiership coaches, Damien Hardwick, I want to take you back to his first ever press conference as the coach of the Gold Coast Suns.
80% of our first premiership side is sitting in this room right now. You know, there'll be a few bits added along the way, but the fact of the matter is this side and this club are very capable of saluting in the not too distant future.
Okay, so he said 80%. Now, I know he was heavily criticised at the moment, but since he's taken over, the ins that played on the weekend, you look at those names. So that's 16% of their current list. So he said 80, it was actually 84. He's almost bang on.
Yeah, I don't think we've doubted the talent that Gold Coast has got, and then they've been very specific with those 2 players coming off the half-back line that play the game style that he
Rioli
wants.
and Noble.
Yeah, and then you've got some young talent that can play on the forward line to give Ben King some help.
And Humphrey's
again.
He arrived over the weekend. So if a few more of those guys can come on after 3 or 4 years in the system, we'll look out.
Are you willing to say it?
What, they'll play finals?
Yep.
Absolutely, they play finals.
Wow.
Yeah,
well, they're third and they've got a game up their hand.
Yeah, but we've said... how many times have we said this about the Suns?
It seems different. Yeah. I don't think a Suns side in the past, been 29 points down, would turn around and hammer the Swans the way they did.
Let's get to the interesting postscript that developed after the final game of round 7, and that was the demolition job that the Sam Mitchell-coached Hawthorn Football Club did on the West Coast Eagles. Let's hear from Andrew McWalter after the game.
Yeah, first full game back for a while. I thought he had some really nice moments, and then some moments where he looked like he hadn't played back for a while, which is to be expected. But I think he was pretty solid. I know Joel got a couple of clear jumps at the ball, which is hard. You don't want Marbs to be able to get that, but I thought there were some good signs.
Is that looking like a long-term thing for Oscar?
Yeah, potentially. Yep, we're open to it, and we're just going to work our way through it with Oz and our team. But yeah, potentially.
What do you make of them sending Tom De full forward and start the last quarter?
I probably shouldn't say it because I don't know what was going on in their team, to be honest. But that's their prerogative, I suppose.
Why the long forwards?
I haven't seen Tom Barrass play forward too often in his career.
So the initial comment there from Andrew McQualter was Oscar Allen and talking about the fact that he was moved from forward to back. And then you could hear afterwards he was asked directly about Tom Barrass, of course, former West Coast Eagle, playing for Hawthorn, who at the start of the last quarter was moved forward. And he took a long time to think about that answer.
He did. So on the first one, Oscar Allen, I can't believe the speed and agility that he's lost. So that's a big concern for me. So I don't mind him going back because I don't see how he can win the ball forward in the nick that he's in. I'm not sure what it is, a body or he's unfit.
Is it a weight of mind thing as much as it is a body thing, Lordo, because of the negotiations that he's having about his own future?
Do you think it's having that big an impact?
Yeah. I think clearly, Sam. When you saw the way he approached his own media conference to address the meeting with Sam Mitchell, and even the response there to McQualter, it was more what he clearly didn't say than what he said. It was his body language. And this comes 2 weeks after he and Sam Mitchell supposedly, in their words, cleared the air on a chance meeting in Adelaide, which was about a week after Sam Mitchell had met with Oscar Allen. So the fact that Oscar Allen's the focus of Tom Barrass going forward, I don't know why McQualter would have an issue with that, though. I mean, Sam Mitchell's entitled to play any player he wants, anywhere, isn't he? Surely.
I love the honesty that he potentially found it disrespectful, that a man who's kicked one career goal in Tom Barrass was thrown forward because maybe that's where the West Coast Eagles are at. But I wouldn't mind. Could you use it if you're Andrew McQualter?
I think they've got bigger issues than to worry about where Tom Barrass and the opposition's key back are playing.
Was it disrespectful at all?
But who cares? It's none of your business. Who cares? If they want to play junior football and play backs as forwards for a quarter, you take it after them and you go after them. But Waterman and Williams were in good form as far as form can go for the Eagles in the forward line, so they had to find a spot for Oscar Allen. And why not where the ball's going to be most of the game?
Yeah, I was surprised too. I mean, as you said, he's got bigger issues, but Sicily normally goes forward, Weddle normally goes forward, and it was Barrass this time around. So he maybe found that they were just taking the mickey out of him, but that's where they're at.
Well, if that is indeed the case, take that a line further, because if they're trying to woo Oscar Allen, if you're saying it's disrespectful to put Tom Barrass forward, he's putting him on Oscar Allen, the player he's wooing to his footy club.
Yeah.
I'm not buying the disrespect angle that was put to McQualter.
Yeah. Happy with the Hawks?
The Hawks, I don't think they've had a great year or fortnight in particular.
Really?
Yeah, so if you look at this is the next 6 weeks. So they've got a couple of games they should win and they should go to, that'll be 7-2. So they'll be in a wonderful position. But when you look at where they're at, and Mitchell's been fantastic. He's not getting caught up in the wins. He'll say to you, we're just not quite going well. And I loved what Geelong did to them where I think teams go to school on you and it's very hard to go from top 6 to top 4 to top 2. It's a really tough jump and they're cutting off the corridor on them and they're cutting off their uncontested marks, and I think they've been studied a fair bit. So their numbers, their defensive stuff has dropped off, their inside 50s has dropped off, their time. So a few numbers would be concerning Hawthorn where they're not quite there and where they want to be.
How much of that, Lordo, when you see the discrepancy between this year and last year, is due to Sam Day? Oh, sorry, Will Day.
Will Day.
And I know he missed a bit of last year as well, but he got going late.
The midfield numbers are huge. I think their forward line is a bit of an issue. Like Kel Shadir was a revelation last year, so I think Jack Gunston, the reliance on him has been huge. Chol's not quite there. But anyway, it's 5-2, you'd take it, but I'd like to be going a bit better, I think.
Tell you who would really like to be going a bit better, and that's the Saints. The spotlight has certainly turned to them over the last couple of weeks, hasn't it? And the spray or sprays, I should say, plural, that Ross Lyon has delivered to his side, particularly over the weekend. Their CEO has been forced to jump to the defence of his coach. Let's see how it all played out.
If you want to get into technicalities and go, which I haven't sprayed the group since I've been here, but I think first possession was like 12-10 at one point and clearances were 3-12, right? So we had it, but their physicality and strength, our ability to control the ball, exit the ball in a manner that's expected was bottom end, right? And after quarter time, they responded to that.
I love that aspect. Anyone who's been a parent and has dealt with kids, you can cuddle them and nurture them as much as you like, but occasionally there might be a couple of stern words that go in there as well. And I think, Ross is an experienced coach. He's just driven to get the absolute best out of our players and raise the standards of our club. So for him, he'd been very tolerant and been very cuddly for a while. For him to occasionally come out and just, give someone a bake, I think that's good.
Carl Delena there. the chief executive. And Jimmy, this is round 21 last year, so we have seen this before from Ross.
Yeah, you can't do it every week. Maybe you've got probably 2 bullets or 3 bullets to fire as a coach every year, or else you sound like the old ranting and raving lunatic out the front. And I think it has its place. And when you listen to Ross Lyon when he spoke about it even more, he constantly mentioned, I kept telling them this and he wasn't getting the response. So I know we get a little bit sensitive with it, but if he's built up the trust in the group, a spray or a bake every now and then can jolt people into action.
Yeah.
Did he take off the right player halfway through the second quarter? I'm referring to Hugo Garcia, who he subbed out. He chose to sub out, and that's his right to do. But it's his 16th match of footy. I would have thought there might have been some bigger issues and bigger names that may have made a bigger statement.
Yeah, well, Jack Steele's not travelling too well either, but you're back in your coach. He knows better than us who he should take off the ground. But we'll see how they respond this week. So he didn't get a great response at quarter time because they conceded 4 goals first quarter, then another 4 goals second quarter, and they're down 8 goals to 2 early in the game. So we'll see how they get a response this week from it.
Yeah, and I think the makeup of their list is an interesting point in this conversation of how Ross is coaching them. And let's go back to round 1. They were well beaten by Adelaide, and this is the coach talking about the makeup of their list and their youth.
I don't like to use excuses. It's next man up, but clearly we're a young list that gets a bit more vulnerable, but that's the path we've chosen. But we also want to be better than that.
So this is the fascinating part of it, I think. And, you know, if you're not abreast of all the machinations of St Kilda's list changes over the last few years, they have, as you can see there, have gotten significantly younger. They've gone from the second oldest in 21, and then by the end of last year, the start of this year, they were the equal third youngest. So it is interesting when you look at his coaching style through the lens of the demographic of their list. And you're coaching under 18 side at the moment, had a win on the weekend, but it is fascinating, isn't it? You talk about the younger generation, you hear this a lot from coaches that they need more hugs than necessarily maybe sprays, whereas maybe when you were coming up through and you had Kevin Sheedy, like that sort of coaching style would have been a lot more prevalent.
That's right. So that's what Jimmy comes back to. It's an occasional thing. He understands that. He's been around longer than anyone. He's a frustrated man at the moment. That's what I'm sensing at St Kilda.
Does he have the right to be? Is it the list more than his coaching style?
That's where he's got to just be realistic of where they're at. Are they? Yeah, because they've had good games v Geelong.
Well, I'd argue they're no better under him than what they were under Brett Ratton. Yeah. Brett Ratton won a final, if you remember, only 5 years ago, 4 seasons ago it was. And again, have a look at these numbers under Ross. I mean, and look at the last 3 matches, Lordo. There's 110 points or more scored against the Saints in each of the last 3 games. Brisbane Lions, obviously, on the weekend was a whole lot more than that. But prior to that, it was Western Bulldogs and GWS. And for that to happen against a Ross Lyon coach team 3 weeks in a row, it's almost unheard of.
And he's not getting the effort that he normally gets from his team. So that's why he would be concerned.
And I don't think there's partially a distraction. He'd be happy that we're talking about this behavioural component and these rev-ups he's giving his players. And he'd like us to talk about the youth of the team because of the lack of form. There's nothing to show right now.
So do you think it's misdirection? Do you think it's a deflection away from how they're playing to have him talking about
I think it was organic, but I know what he's like to know that there's enough distraction in what he does. And let's not talk about the 3 times 110 point plus scores against them in the last 3 weeks.
And you know, Stephen Silvani and Gubby Allen there, who are 2 very experienced operators, are essentially managing their list. And this is, you know, all the way back from 2010. This is when Stephen Silvani returned to Carlton to be their list manager, and he talked about a 66-game, or back then a 3-year rebuild. And at that point, Stephen Silvani really only had 1 star youngster on the list, and that was Patrick Cripps. And he said, how many guys can I get that kids want to come and actually see at the footy as we're rebuilding? We might not win lots of games. We might not play finals early. And they went and drafted Wiedering and Walsh and Mackay and Curnow, and they had these stars. And I just wonder, you know, they're throwing all these huge dollars at Tom De Konings and these sorts of guys, and previous ones they've missed out on. They can't seem to find them through the draft. So I think there is, to use your point, there's a frustration internally at St Kilda. Is it the chicken or the egg? Are we no good because we can't get the players through the door, or is it the other way around?
And Carlton must be laughing if De Koning hasn't made his decision yet.
Well, he hasn't made his decision.
Yeah,
that's real.
It's been a great 3 weeks in for Carlton with how St Kilda are going versus how Carlton's going. If I was his manager, I'd say, you've just played in front of 80,000 people at a full packed MCG and the mob over the road. Just think about it. Where are they at? Do you think they're going any better? Is the money worth taking over there? So that's what he must be throwing at, or that's what I'd have him consider.
You had a phone call from your brother Brad today. I'm kidding.
I've never spoken to them. I'm being myself in my shoes. I stayed at the one club because of that reason, because of what you get, whether you're bottom or
but
you're
you
top.
were at a big club though.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. He's at a big club.
So don't take that for granted.
That's
is
what
the
I'm
message.
saying, because wherever you are at Carlton, you're always playing in the big games, and that's where St Kilda, apart from money, aren't selling anything to me. Are they selling anything to you apart from the contract they're putting in front of him?
3 weeks ago, I probably would have said maybe 3 weeks ago, and Carlton 0-4. But you're right, it's changed in the last few weeks.
What are your thoughts on that?
No, well, I mean, you've been big on the De Koning thing too, that it's a one-out move. They'd be better off getting 4 players at the same $1.7 million per year than him. And again, the most recent example is the coach is spraying the players at quarter time. He doesn't want to go into that environment.
Okay, hot start on Footy Classified, and plenty more still to come. As we mentioned off the top, we're going to talk about the Blues and whether they can be trusted after that stirring win. We're going to talk about Bailey, Bevo, Jamara, Horne-Francis. But don't forget, tonight, straight after Footy Classified, the debut of players Jeremy Cameron, Nick Dacos, Nick Watson co-host the first episode of that show, Players, where we see a different side of our game stars. You don't want to miss it. That's next, right after Footy Classified. Welcome back to Footy Classified. There was some sort of resolution to the Noah Balta saga at Punt Road across the course of the weekend, and well, you make your mind up. How was it handled from a club perspective and how it played out?
Move on, guys.
Yeah, no more questions around it.
We're done with Bolter. Got a game tomorrow night.
Someone from the club spoken. I talk about him every week. It's okay.
About it every week.
Any questions about the game?
We have spoken about it. We're moving on. We've got a game. This is a press conference about a game tomorrow night. We're moving on.
I spoke on Tuesday and I'm here speaking again tonight, and look, in hindsight, should I have been there at the start of that press conference? Maybe, and I'll wear that criticism, absolutely, but I think Adam did an outstanding job in the press conference, and he has done in his media performances recently. Probably we just felt the questions were getting a bit repetitive.
How do they handle it, do you think, Waldo?
It didn't come across well for me, just watching. You guys know this area better than I do, but had me thinking, change of president, coach, CEO over the time, and did they let themselves down, which most of the industry have said they have in recent weeks over the way they've gone about it.
Yeah, I mean, we all had strong views on this particular matter. You led the way, I think, Jimmy, on your belief that he should have been stood down before he was sentenced through the courts. And Sam, I want to put it to you because there's a feeling, and we'll listen to Tony Shaw before I get you to respond to this, but the judge was swayed by the AFL and Richmond's response to this matter, and even the way that the Balta status might have been factored in as well.
I think this magistrate saw an opportunity to say, we have a so-called role model. Now, if the magistrate said, you're going to jail, I would have put my hand up and said, no, you've made that decision, that's okay. If she said 300 hours of community work, that's okay. But then she'd throw in the curfew to hurt an AFL player who is a member of the public more than what the normal member of the public would have paid. Don't even think about telling me that she didn't see this as an ego trip for herself to have an impact on it.
Yeah, it was fascinating. I mean, I was part of that conversation with both Tony Shaw and the man sitting next to me in Lloyd here. I've spoken to some people and some senior people in the legal fraternity today and across the weekend. So here are the sorts of things that a magistrate would take into account when handing out a sentence. And the impacts on employment is, of course, one of those. So depending on the type of employment, if they're willfully gaining employment, their likelihood to re-offend or the prospects of their rehabilitation because of that sentence, I think it's all taken into account. So I said to Tony at the time on air, I thought the comment about it being an ego trip for the magistrate was disrespectful, and I stand by that. I mean, in the end, the magistrate's opinion is the only one that has mattered in this entire saga. So I think that's probably where this will...
And the curfew component to the sanctioning may have fitted in with what you've just highlighted there.
Well, potentially. I mean, only the magistrate will be able to know that. But
are you both of the view that because he played that one game, it hurt him more so?
It didn't help him, in my eyes, but again, I'm not into the mind of the judge. The team that they lost to on the weekend has finally settled on a CEO for the replacement of Gary Pert. It's Paul Guerra, who was the head of the Victorian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. A very well-connected person in Victoria. He's had various other jobs. He's the head of Vodafone at one stage of his business life, and a Victorian racing official as well. So they've made that decision and announced tomorrow.
Round 7. Round 7 it took them to find a CEO.
They've got one now.
He'd want to be the right one at round 7.
No, I think he'll be the right one. He's incredibly well respected. He's a smart decision maker, and he can start doing that, making some smart decisions for the Dees.
They need a few of those. On the Cats and the Blues, I mean, so many questions around that game. We'll get to the Blues shortly, but did we see why the Cats went so hard after both, not only Bailey Smith, but also Clayton Oliver, given what happened to them in the midfield?
Yeah, I think we did. One of the strengths is Bailey Smith and Max Holmes, but they're not big, and Patrick Dangerfield's playing permanently forward at the moment, and that's one thing that they'll have to look at. They don't want to have to pull the trigger on Patrick Dangerfield very often, the way it looks with no Tom Hawkins. He's doing such great damage as a forward, but the size, I'm not talking height, but the power of Hewitt and Chera and Cripps and these guys just did a number on Geelong through that midfield.
Yeah, Carlton got its one-wood back, and that's that big, brutal contest footy. And you mentioned that size, Lloyd. Not only are they taller than the Cats, but physically dominant. They won the ruck first hit, and they just overwhelmed the Cats.
It was good to see. It was good to see. And there's Chris Scott, lamenting what went wrong.
That's the midfield group?
Yeah, this got the midfield group, and you hear him talk about clearance and stoppage when you lip read what he's having to say there through that vision, which was a concern where they were absolutely belted.
Jimmy, you're good mates with Andrew Mackie and the support that he and Chris Scott have got for Bailey Smith. Now, again, I don't have a major issue with this, but I know footy clubs sometimes will get a crackdown. Now, the use of the bird on certain occasions, there was another use of it, so you can tally it up at maybe 2, at maybe 3, maybe 4 uses. Sam thinks it's 4, but what stage will they crack down?
Well, Chris Scott said himself it was 7 birds and we've got an issue, so he might have 3 more up his sleeve, Sam.
Well, I think it's interesting. Let's see how it played out across the weekend and Andrew Mackie and his comments surrounding Bailey Smith.
What we want to be is someone that, or a footy club that creates an environment where we get the best out of a player and an individual. And when they leave the Geelong Footy Club, hopefully they're better for their time. So whatever that means, it might mean a little bit of words of wisdom along the way. But for most part, we celebrate who Bailey is and the footballer and the person, and love what he is bringing to us.
We didn't need to impose ourselves too much on Bailey because he voluntarily said, oh, look, time over again, I won't do it. Now, if he does that 7 times, we've got a huge problem.
Well, he's
can I ask the maths on this?
You're going to go the 2 birds. That gives him 2 bites.
There's no way you only get 1 bird for the double bird. So that's 2. Right, that's 2 birds, 1 stone. So we're up to 4.
So he's 4 for 7. Look, I have no doubt that the coach and Andrew Mackie have spoken to him about it and said, look, 1, it's not painting you in a good light. 2, it's costing you a fair bit of dough as well. Can you dial it back? But the emotion is getting the better of him at the moment. And
he's gone back to the bird.
You know him well, Sam. Can you see if they sat him down and said, this must stop? What's he going to...
He's going to say, yeah, I've got to stop.
But then can't help himself.
Well, you see, he saw the cameras there. The cheeky bird at the training.
How will they as a club handle it, you think? Would they be behind the scenes going, this is not good for us?
No, I reckon they've explained it to him and they've walked him through it. But when the game's going, what else are you supposed to do? You can't physically go out and knock his hand down.
I think he's still got 4 up his sleeve though, Sam. I'm only counting as 1, the double use of it.
You're only getting 1 for the 2.
That's only 3 infringements. He's got 4 up his sleeve.
Hey, well, he got towed up. He was solid himself. Didn't use the ball as well as he'd like. But the midfield of Carlton, we spoke a few weeks ago, Jimmy and I, about getting the runners on the outside. And
you did this at the Plasma and they've listened to you, Lord.
We did. We got it on the Plasma. we wanted Hollands. Ollie Holland's involved. Elijah's made a big difference since coming back into the team.
He has.
This is one of my favourite clips of the round, this from Sam Walsh. When he starts doing this, Carlton are a different side. Look at the numbers. I know 2 of them were against poor sides, but they have just gone through the roof. They're uncontested numbers.
Yeah, and the other thing I like, Lloydie, when the camera pans back, look at the intent of the rest of the Carlton side to get up and get involved. And it's probably the first time we've seen in some time Silvani, Wiedering, Curnow, Mackay and even De Koning all on the same side playing decent footy.
Yeah, mixed emotions for Carlton because we know it was a happy day at the MCG, but a sad day today with the loss of Peter Bosustow at 67, who, Damo, was such an electric figure.
Yeah, he was.
For that footy club.
And as big a name in some Carlton people's eyes as Big Nick and Bruce Still, despite only having less than 70 games of football to his name. It was an extraordinary period, and he was as influential as anyone. And the nickname The Buzz, the vibrancy that was at Princes Park when he was on song, it was nothing like it.
As we go to the break on Footy Classified, we say Vale to Peter Bosustow.
Kick sailing goalwards into Bosustow, mark of the year! Bosustow! Off the back, Ian and Curtis once more. Doing a great job. Well smothered though by Bosustow. Picks it up and has a snapshot at goal. And has put it through. Carlton into attack. Bosustow! What a mark! He is giving the crowd here a treat.
Bosustow showing
shoots towards goal. Coming in to meet him now is Bosustow. A snap for goal. It's not a pass. What a goal by Bosustow. Bosustow's fourth goal.
Bosustow has the ball tapped down. If it sits, he could be in business. He's caught by McCarthy, shrugs it, gets caught the second time. Now has the free kick and plays on in towards goal. A beautiful looking kick.
So Barry round goal. Bad hand pass. Kicked off the ground by Bosustow.
Welcome back to Footy Classified. It is a fascinating scenario with their coach, Luke Beveridge. And the question has to be asked, are the Dogs playing a dangerous game by not re-signing him?
Well, I'm a bit confused in where it's at. So, like, who's driving this? Is it Luke Beveridge, who feels like he just wants to wait to see how he's feeling, whether he's come to the end? Is it the Western Bulldogs who feel the same? Who's driving it? Who's got the whip hand? Who hasn't?
What's your read?
I'd say 2 or 3 weeks ago, I'd say I understand the Western Bulldogs, where they're at, but it's just that he's had one of the most fantastic 3 weeks with the injuries that he's got and the way his team's performing, that it's just letting everybody know what a fantastic coach he has been for the Western Bulldogs, probably one of their best coach ever, probably, and grand finals, premiership, and now doing what he's doing with injuries, he's on top of his game. So that's where now he's putting the pressure back on, that if they don't want me, well, someone else will.
And they're winning while dealing with a number of distractions, including Jamarra Ugle-Hagan. Let's hear from their chief executive, Meat Baines, and then see what the coach said.
There's often a rush for final judgment on this. We've only just completed 6 rounds. Mara's contracted till the end of next year. So our focus is very much just on supporting him from a medical perspective and helping him get to where he needs to get to. And part of what you're referring to is right. Like we need to ensure that he's doing absolutely everything he needs to help himself. And that's part of the juggle and the challenge. Football's a fair way off at this point in time and not a consideration for us at all.
And those distractions continue, and there will be a coming together of all parties at some stage soonish. Now, whether that's a 2-week soonish, whether it's a 6-week soonish, but they need to address this because while he's contracted, as Meat Baines says, for 2026, they need to make a decision on if there is any possibility at all if he's going to be available in 2025, and that's looking highly unlikely.
They're amazing comments from the coach. He'll tell you he wants to play at the highest level, but the actions don't back up the words.
And they're slightly against what Meat Baines has been trying to say publicly, and that's just what happens. And this is the latest social media post, which was at 4:25 a.m, at least when it was received by people in the public who follow Jamarra Ugle-Hagan on Instagram. And it's just the latest in a sequence of posts. And you mentioned the distraction, Sam. You've got, obviously, the coach out of contract. You've got the captain out of contract too. And that's normally an unusual scenario to have both those situations. And even Meat Baines himself, he's got a decision to make whether he wants us to launch fully into potentially becoming the 2 IC at the AFL, which is a job that will be put to him and I believe Simon Garlick and others as well. So all these distractions are in play. But what we'll say, Lloydie, about the Luke Beveridge situation, Luke Darcy found him as the director of the footy club in 2014, went and got him, sourced him and basically gave him the job if he wanted. And that's a paraphrasing of a more complex situation. He is still in weekly contact with Luke Beveridge as a director of the footy club. And
do you think this is his call, mainly?
I think it'll be... Ultimately, he will be taking to the board his recommendation. And what I feel I know, he's never, ever once wavered in his support of Luke Beveridge. So to get to your question, Lloydie, whose decision is it? I think it's Luke Beveridge more than the club at this stage when it's all said and done, because in the 11 seasons he's coached, twice ended up in a grand final. You could argue the last month, he's at the peak of his powers.
What say you as a former director of a club?
Look, I can understand both sides, and Lloydie touched on it. Is it Luke Beveridge waiting? But I can understand clubs waiting to the end of the year. You know, keep seeing how the year plays out, get a better lens on it, where they're both at. And as they both keep saying, they're waiting for each other, just to feel each other out. And why not wait until round 15 or 16 and make the decision? We're always in a rush. If they're not signed by this point, we try and find the story in that. Round 15 or 16, we'll probably know a lot more about it.
It's working right now, isn't it? I mean, it's absolutely powerfully working. What's going on?
Yep, it certainly is. I'll tell you what else is working. That's the Sledgehammer. It's coming up with Lordo next, plus Good Call, Bad Call, The Cook, and a whole lot more on Footy Classified.
Craig McRae spoke over the off-season about mastering the craft, doing the fundamentals well, and It was there for everyone to see in the wet on Anzac Day. These hands are as good as any that you'll see in the comp. So Nick Dacos, he's as good as there is. Still side bottom, shaking tackles, hands over the back. This is wet weather football. This man Long, what a revelation he's been the last few weeks. They get it back out to Perryman and bang from 50. So that's why they are the best side in the comp, because they are the cleanest. Connor O'Sullivan, he's an 8-game player. He's more been an intercept player across his junior career. I think they are leaving him on the last line of defence too often in recent weeks, and he's being exposed. So I think he's at his best when he's high. Don't get him deep because he's been found out in recent weeks. So look after the kid and don't have him on the last line of defence. The Swans, although the best kicking side I've nearly ever seen at round 15 last year. Well, I'm not sure what's happened to them. Yes, they've lost Errol Goulden, but the turnovers up there in the Gold against the Gold Coast was appalling. Like, I've never seen skills like it. It was just the basic fundamentals that was really, really poor, which let down the Sydney Swans. Speaking of letting them down, Matt Roberts gives away a free kick to Humphrey. He's inside the square, Humphrey. Watch Matt Roberts. He goes and stands on the 50, gives Humphrey an extra 6-7 metres, and that's all it took for Humphreys to go and just go bang. So they weren't quite switched on up there, and that's why they lost after half-time. And Joel Fraser, what a revelation he's been for the Western Bulldogs. He's got hands as good as anybody in the competition. So there's one handball out to Bontempelli. This next one is that quick. Everyone thought it was a throw until you watch it on the replay. And is this as good a handball as you'll see from Fraser when you see it again? Gets that hand to it, and that's how quick he is currently playing the game. And this is one of the worst clips I've seen for the year. This is Dougal Howard. So here's Wilkie. He does everything right for the team. He presses up. He's saying to Dougal Howard, you take Hipwood for me. He just refused to go. Whether he's unfit, didn't want to do it, but he let down one of the best men at St Kilda, and I just wonder whether he'll be in the gun this week, Sam.
Well done, Lordo. It is appointment television now, the Sledgehammer. You cannot miss it. You can't miss Good Call, Bad Call, because it's up next on Footy Classified. Welcome back. Time for Good Call, Bad Call. Jimmy Bartell, as he always demands, has the new ball. Jimmy, Cale Hooker owes the Fox Footy commentary team a steak dinner. Good call, bad call.
Let me take a look at the vision before I make up my mind, Sam.
It's a worst nightmare for a 6'5" defender, isn't it? Against a little Nixie.
Shades of Tommy Belchambers trying to chase Buddy down that wing there. Afternoon, Tommy, if you're watching, he hates being reminded about that. It's a one-man...
Oh, poor Cale Hooker here. I think he owes a big Belcho one for getting thrown into him, but unfortunately he gets that one dragged up time and time again.
He hates it too. Sam, this is to you. The upcoming round makes a watertight case for a rolling fixture. Good call, bad call.
Great call from you, Damo. Astute call, looking towards the future call. We cannot be in 2025 in a billion-dollar industry and saying Essendon and North Melbourne and St Kilda Fremantle are two big prime-time matches when you've got Brisbane Gold Coast, the biggest Q clash ever, the match of the year so far, hidden on Sunday night.
Yeah, but that goes into a public holiday in Queensland.
No, I understand that. But what we need to do is we need to put the biggest games and the best games in the biggest time slots.
You've got to give them something at some stage.
It's a national game, James.
Give them something.
Damo, always assume you're on camera if you're at the footy. Good call, bad call.
This is a good call, Lordo, because Essendon President Dave Barham knows that he's on camera here, and he knows that the Essendon supporters would love this passion, Lordo. Look at it. He's up and about after Sam Durham's second goal. Good call. I like it. I like it.
Lloyd, there are some things that are off limits to commercial branding. Good call, bad call.
Bad call. If you can make $1, you go for it. You know what I'm like. So there is... he's got the 4X Speedos on and he has them dropped down just to say he might get a few extra slabs in the mail during the week.
That is actually amazing. Jimmy, the Northern States battle is in desperate need of a rebrand.
This is probably your best call you've ever come up with, Sam. The Q Clash. How boring is that? What are we playing for, an insurance comp or something? Pineapple Grapple. That's what it should be called. Every year, Pineapple Grapple.
That's the best call I've ever made.
Ever.
I've had to get that through for a long time. It's not sticking.
I'm not the originator of it, but I'm certainly on board.
Hey, Sam, back to you. Nick Dacos leading the Pies out as captain was one of the stories, one of the great stories of 2025. Good call, bad call.
No, good call, but I think this is a cheeky call. I think this is an anti-broadcast call. I know what you're trying to lead me into, because 7 first of all, and then Fox after that. Didn't quite get the moment. But at the end of the day, I mean, Nick Dacos captaining Collingwood, it wasn't as though it was a huge surprise. So I'm saying bad call from you, Damo.
Damo, the journalist's code of conduct is alive and well. Good call, bad call.
Let's listen to Caroline Wilson before I answer that one, Lotto.
What is extraordinary is this was caused by Fox Footy. So Fox Footy had a power board down on the ground, it got wet and it short-circuited all the communications from the coaches' boxes. A few journos who work for Fox Footy, I think, knew this and didn't report it.
It's a bad call, Lotto. She's happy to throw everyone and anyone under the bus when she needs to, and we've all copped it on this panel. So bad call.
Lloydie, bring us home. They say the internet never forgets, but neither does television. Good call, bad call?
Good call by you, Jimmy. Jed Buslinger, he's had to wait a long time for his first game, and even this go way back to when he was in Auskick as well. We didn't miss that either.
Jed Buslinger. Hello, Jed. You're going to the 2012 AFL Grand Final. Congratulations, mate. Well done. I think our little man might be a touch excited.
How good is that? Amazing his dreams, and he got there on the weekend.
And Luke Darcy has not aged a day. Don't miss the closing cook. It's up next on Footy Classified.
No, we've definitely evolved a fair bit. We used to win a lot of games by coming from behind or being close the whole time. I feel like we've been able to put a lot of four-quarter performances together this year and then really put teams to the sword.
Welcome back to Footy Classified. That is the voice of Jack Crisp comparing 2023 Collingwood to that of 2025. And when you hear it like that they may be better, that's going to send some fear, some shivers through the competition, I think.
Jimmy, they chased their tail a lot, didn't they? They won from nowhere, still won a flag, whereas now they're doing it a bit more convincingly.
Yeah, they're well structured. They keep finding players as well. I know we keep focusing on the experienced guys, but they bring guys in from other clubs. Of course, Houston and Perryman. And then, you find Long as another big midfield battering ram. They've got some depth still there, the Pies.
Well, the connection you've got with these two players, Scott Pendlebury, obviously, with the Haileybury assistant coaching connection, and also Archie Roberts, who you coached, and the moment that they shared after Anzac Day, what did that tell you?
Yeah, it was fantastic, and Archie was good enough to come to our game at Haileybury the next day, and those two were connecting again. So involved in a flag at Haileybury 2 years ago, and now playing against each other, which is sensational. And Scott's still very much a mentor to him.
A very good pickup from Damo, just that vision in the background. Let's get to the closing cook.
Thanks, Sam. And everyone loves talking about Bailey Fritsch's hair and where his inspiration came from, but let's take a listen to BT and the commentary of that recently.
That Bailey Fritsch hair is standing incredibly stiff and straight. Look at it. It's growing towards the moon.
Well, I've found his inspiration and where it come from, so let's roll the tape. Where did this inspiration come from? There it is. So I don't know what you roll with that, but...
that is such a snipe. That is so unfair.
And that's what I love doing, Sam, when you're not least expect it.
It's only 2 weeks between a good one and a bad one.
I think the hair was looking better then than it is now, isn't it?
That might be the problem. You're assistant.